Good morning, everybody, and welcome to, as you can see, I'm no longer in Kuala Lumpur. I'm back in good old Penn. Slight temperature difference. Nonetheless, it's lovely to be there, and it's good to be here. And thank you so much for joining us for our Bible reflection for today, continuing our adventure, and it is an adventure through the remarkable book of Exodus. And today, my friends, we are in chapter 17. So Exodus 17, here comes. From the wilderness of Sin, the whole congregation of the Israelites returned by stages as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, "Why do you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, "What shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me." And the Lord said to Moses, "Go on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile and go. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock and water will come out of it, so the people may drink." Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the place Massah and Meribah, because the people of Israelites quarreled and tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some men for us and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek while Moses, Aaron and Hur went to the top of the hill. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed, and when he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew weary, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on each side, and the one on one side and the other on the other side. So his hands were steady until sunset. And Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the sword. And the Lord said to Moses, "Write this as a reminder in the book and recite it in the hearing of Joshua. I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven." And Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, "A hand upon the banner of the Lord. The Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, so quite simply, this chapter is cut into two neat sections here. Firstly, you have the section at Massah and Meribah, and the second section is about the war with the battle, I should say, with Amalek. Let's take them two one at a time. Firstly, we'll talk about the incident, shall we say, at Massah Meribah, you might call it, and let's say from the beginning that what we got here is that the people are complaining about the lack of water. Now, to some extent, you can kind of see where they're coming from. Thirst is quite a if you're thirsty, you know about it. On the other hand, you do get a bit of a change here, because the word Massah means testing, and the word Meribah means complaining. Essentially, so Massah Meribah is a place where they complained and they tested the Lord. And you get the impression here that there's a bit of a sea change, because in a sense, they really should have known better. In lots of ways, they'd seen God at work already in the plagues and things. They'd seen God at work liberating them from Egypt, but a few chapters before. In the previous chapter, but 1, they'd seen God making bitter water into nice water when they complained then. In chapter 16, they'd been hungry, they complained to God then, and God had provided food for them. And what's more, it's quite clear that they went where God led them. Did they really think that God was going to lead them in a place out where it wasn't going to be any good for them? So, in a sense, you kind of get the impression that the people kind of really should have known better. As I say, I mean, they were being led by God. What were they saying about God? They thought God would lead them into a place where they was going to go and die in the desert. What a complete waste of time that would have been. And what's more, they'd seen God at work in providing food for them, providing water for them already, and freeing them from Egypt and various other things. So was that not enough? You also notice here a bit of a kind of change in Moses too. I think the two things there's a sea change. In the previous chapters, Moses had been pretty resolute. I mean, he'd always, in a sense, when the people had complained, he had remained faithful. When the others had kind of lost hope and lost heart and so on, Moses had kind of remained strong. But you do get the impression, if you read what Moses says here in chapter 17, there is a bit of a sea change in Moses. You get the impression that his faith is flagging. Partly, but I think the people are complaining again. I think maybe perhaps he sees where they're coming from a bit. Maybe he's losing heart himself. Maybe he's worried that they're going to stone him. That's kind of what they often did in the Middle East in those days, if they thought someone had led them badly. So you get the impression there's a bit of a kind of change in Moses here. Moses is kind of losing heart himself, and he's the way he approaches God is rather different to what he has done in previous chapters. Which then brings me on to another time where this particular incident is mentioned, which is in Psalm 95. And which says at the end, "Oh, that today you'd listen to my voice, harden not your hearts as at Meribah, at Massah in the wilderness, when your forebears tested me and put me to the proof, though they'd seen my works. 40 years long I detested that generation and said, this people are wayward in their hearts, they do not know my ways. So I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest." So you do very much see here, there's a change, that the people are losing heart, even though they'd seen God at work, even though they've been led by God. And you get the impression Moses is kind of losing heart here as well. But God's response to Moses is quite interesting. He says, firstly, I'm going to go ahead of you. I'm going to go to a rock, okay? And you are to get up, he says to Moses, and you are to lead the people to the rock. I think in a sense what he's saying is, come on, get up and be the leader that you're supposed to be, in a funny kind of way, Get up and lead the people. Be the leader that you are. Get up and lead the people out. Lead them to the rock, strike the rock, and water will come out. And again, it's the whole striking rock thing. Notice this stuff, because you hear about the stuff again in a minute, in the other story we'll talk about in a moment. But, you don't normally get water by striking a stick against the rock, But in a sense, it proves that God provided. God did provide, They cried out, and God did not lead them into a place where they were just going to go and uselessly die in the desert. And it wasn't some clever water divining. It wasn't some clever water device. They didn't suddenly invent some great, agricultural devices to spread water around. It wasn't. He struck this was a sign of God's work, and he struck the rock and water came out. So I think in a sense here, God is saying to Moses, come on, lead the people, be the leader that you are, and I will provide, which he duly did. So that's the story of Massah and Meribah. As I say, Massah means testing, and Meribah means complaining. And you hear again in Psalm 95, but don't be these people that see my works, and so the message to us today is don't be like them. Then the other story, the other section of this chapter 17 is about this battle with Amalek. Now, Amalek, the Amalekites, were descendants of Esau, if you remember, who is Jacob's brother. They kind of fell out, and so the Amalekites and the wilderness of Sin doesn't mean sin as in disobeying God. It means it's like Sinai. It's this kind of the bit between Egypt and what we now know as Israel, a kind of deserty bit. And the Amalekites attacked the Israelites here. And again, you get this fascinating story, this battle here. And it's the first time, interesting enough, that you actually see Joshua involved. Joshua later becomes Moses' successor. The fifth book of the Bible is called Joshua, or the sixth book of the Bible is called Joshua. So it's the first time you hear Joshua. So there's a bit of kind of early stage succession planning going on here, I think. And that Moses holds this staff in his hand. And whenever the staff is held high, the Israelites win. And when he gets tired and puts his hands down, then the Amalekites start to do well. And again, it's a bit like the section we're talking about. When Moses is strong, when Moses is being faithful and holding the staff up, the Israelites win. But when he kind of loses heart, when he loses strength, the Amalekites start to win. So they come with this kind of clever idea where Moses kind of sits down on this stone. And Aaron stands on one side, and Hur, which apparently is Hebrew, is Whitey, apparently, snowflake or something like that, on the other side, and they kind of hold his arms up to make sure that he holds the staff up. But the staff thing really is about saying that the battle is not the Israelites' battle; the battle is God's battle. Because why should holding a stick in the air possibly any difference to the progress of a battle? It's because God was doing the work, because they were working in God's strength. And when he held up, it was similar that God's at work. And when he put it down, it was simple that he wasn't. And I think it's interesting because while Moses is being strong, while Moses is being faithful, the battle's winning. But I think it also demonstrates the fact that for all of us, as we'd already discovered in this chapter, Moses starts to lose heart around about this sort of area. But he needs people to hold him up. And I think that's, again, it talks about the importance of the church. That one of the greatest gifts God has given to us is each other. That when my faith is struggling a bit, you can support me. And when your faith is struggling, I can support you. And that we need each other. That when our faith flags, as he does, because we all have times in life when you start to trust God, where's God, what's God doing, and things like that, that we can support and love and help each other, as Aaron and Hur do for Moses in this, because ultimately the battle belongs to the Lord. So 2 fascinating stories here. The story of Massa Meribah, when the people start, and Moses starts to lose heart as well. But actually, the message in Psalm 95 is let's not be like them. Let's remain faithful, and let's be strong in our faith. And the other one, of course, is the battle of the Amalekites, which again illustrates that Moses starts to waver at times, but we can hold each other up. So 2 fascinating sections in this chapter this morning. Do read it again at your leisure. It's great stuff. And friends, God bless you. Thank you for joining us again. Good to be with you. Do please share this message with your friends. Have a lovely day. God bless you. And thanks for watching. And it's a bit cooler here than it was in Kuala Lumpur.